you're very welcome back. Have you ever wondered what it must have been like to be an onlooker during the Troubles in the midst of all that chaos? Well, that's exactly what our next guest went through as a photographer. Crispin Rodwell, president of the Press Photographers Association of Ireland, joins us now to tell us about a new book, Shooting in the Darkness, which features some of the starkest images from that time. You're very welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul.
How are you today?
Looking forward to having a chat.
Good. So tell me about this then. So you would have started taking photographs back then when the Troubles were at their height. Tell me a bit about, though, who you were and why you decided to get into a profession that, look, wasn't without its dangers, to say the least.
I grew up in a media household. Mum did some broadcasting, Dad was a journalist. So growing up in Belfast, I had seen this daily diet of murder and mayhem and death and destruction. Every news bulletin was on the radio or the TV as I was growing up. We were very aware of what was happening. But the people of Northern Ireland were always very, very news aware because it was such a happening story and stories of such gravity.
Yeah.
So in 1981, as a 19-year-old, I followed on my father's coattails into journalism, but decided to go with a camera rather than the notepad and pen.
And in terms of the types of situations that you found yourself in, how were photographers treated back then when you got yourself into those frontline situations?
Sometimes it got nasty. Sometimes it was fraught. Passions were often very, very heightened, and but we never felt particularly threatened.
Okay.
I mean, the threat was there, the danger was there, as some of my pictures show, was that sometimes the story got much too close. But like, you get on with it. We weren't the only people who was having to put ourselves in the front line.
Sure. So what kinds of things then did you see and experience? Talk us through some of the photographs as well, some of the ones that really stand out for you, and some of your experiences. Talk us through that.
Well, none of us were compelled to be witnesses to all of this carnage. We chose it as a career path.
Yeah.
We were very aware that of the role we had in reporting what was a very international and important story. So, well, let's have a look at some pictures and I'll talk you through them.
Sure. Border Destroyed is one of the first photographs we're going to have a look at, so talk us through that one.
On 1990, the IRA took a family hostage in their home in Derry at gunpoint, and they strapped poor Patsy Gillespie, the man of the house, into the car. They loaded the car with explosives and forced him to drive into the middle of Coshquin Army checkpoint, which sits on the border between Derry and Donegal. And when he drove into the checkpoint, they detonated it remotely, killing him and 5 soldiers. The damage was so widespread and the cordon so big around it that I chartered a light aeroplane to fly over it. Only then could you see the scale of the blast.
And that's how you took the photograph?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Body Stretcher is the next photograph we're going to talk about. Talk us through this.
1993, October, it was a sunny afternoon on the Shankill Road in North Belfast, and an IRA bomb was carried into a fish shop and placed on the counter, and it blew up, killing 9 people. 3 of them were children. It also killed the bomber. The explosion, the bomb went off prematurely, and I was very close. I was only 2 miles away. I heard the blast. Instinct told me where.
Picked up your camera and went.
And I went straight up there. So I was there very quickly. And hordes of people who had been shopping on the road had all converged on the scene, and they were lifting breeze blocks and pieces of concrete out, and there were bodies coming out, and there were wounded people being attended to. And as I got there, the emergency services were still arriving. Sometimes we got to things much faster than we would have liked. Often I was on the scene of things before the bulk of the emergency services had turned up.
So how would that affect you emotionally then? You would have seen some horrible, very, very difficult to process things. How did that affect you emotionally? And does it linger a bit? Is it still there with you?
It does still linger, and one of the aspects of digging out all of these archive pictures when the producers of the Shooting the Darkness documentary came to me, I was pulling out negatives that I hadn't looked at in 30 years over 30 years.
Stirred the old feelings.
It stirred the feelings. And, you know, we were all human. We couldn't not have been affected by what we were seeing. This was in our patch. We weren't in some detached part of the world, 3,000 miles away. These were our neighbours, our friends, happening in streets that we drove down day and daily.
Baby shoes. Talk us through this photograph, Crispin. I think this is going to get a lot of people.
4 months after the Good Friday Agreement, which gave us all such hope that the dark, dark days were over, the Omagh bomb went off, killing 29 people and unborn twins. And a few days later, the police put on display some of the personal effects that they had found in the rubble. There were 2 pairs of baby shoes, bloodied and dusty. There were 4 watches, 3 pairs of glasses. There was some hair still caught in the frame of some of the smashed glasses. 2 of the watches had stopped at the very second the bomb had gone off.
Really?
And that really brought home the very, very personal and human aspect of it. And of course, in 1998, after the Good Friday Agreement, we had been without this level of violence for some time. And as I say, we had thought we had consigned all that to history with the Good Friday Agreement, but it wasn't.
But it wasn't the case.
And it just brought us shuddering back to the worst days of the 80s.
Did you ever find out, I'm sure it would have been very difficult, but I'm just wondering, did you ever find out who those shoes belonged to? What child those shoes belonged to?
No, there were 2 one-year-old babies killed, Maura Monaghan and Breda Devine. We weren't told if they were those. There were other children injured. I remember one photograph taken by one of my colleagues, Paul Faith, who features in the book as well, of a crumpled buggy being pulled out of the wreckage just after a blast.
Stuff,
it was dreadful.
That really
it wasn't
is.
the first time the babies had been brought into this slaughter of the innocents, though. Alan Lewis in the book tells a story of how he froze in 1971 when he saw the 2 infants being brought out dead from the rubble of an explosion, again on the Shankill Road, wrapped up in sheets. And he was so frozen with revulsion that he was unable to take the picture when the first one came out, but steeled himself before the second one came.
I mean, that's incredible. To be there and to see something like that is traumatic enough to actually then take the time, poise, and photograph it. I mean, that must be very, very difficult. And you must have really believed what you were doing was important to put yourself through that emotionally.
Well, it was vital. When we took on the role, we knew that it wasn't going to be nice. History is rarely pretty, and the history of the North, the recent history of the North, isn't pretty. So we knew what we were getting into. But somebody had to do it. I mean, globally, photojournalists, this is the role we serve, and it's a very important role.
To document that time. Time for Peace, another photograph we want to talk about. Talk me through that.
The eve of the 1994 IRA ceasefire, 30th of August. We knew that the IRA were going to be declaring a ceasefire the next day. That would trigger the start of the peace process as it became. I was driving through North Belfast and saw children playing in a street, and a slogan was written on the wall, "Time for peace, time to go." And I shot 25, 26 frames of kids riding past on bikes and throwing a ball against the wall. And the little boy in the photograph,
jumping there,
Brian Burns, actually lived in the house that the slogan is painted on.
Is that right?
But I found that out subsequently, and that picture went out globally on the day of the ceasefire, and the day before the ceasefire, and it was used in South China Morning Post and El Mundo and Washington Post. It was used all around the world.
Incredible.
But yeah.
I think a lot of people, just very finally and briefly, I think a lot of people are always fascinated in people that choose professions where they walk into danger rather than run away from it. So what was the reasons, when you were in those hairy moments, those really dangerous moments, what were the reasons why you kept going and didn't turn and run?
We had a job to do.
Was it as simple as that?
And we'd done it before. I mean, certainly at times during the Orange Order Drum Cree protests through '96 and '97, I remember standing in the field with tens of thousands of Orange men all around us, with security forces over here, rolls of barbed wire that made it look like the Maginot Line stopping the Orange men from marching through a Catholic area. And it was getting so fraught as darkness fell that the RUC commander on the ground came over to us and said to the media, "We can't guarantee your safety." And it was the first time we'd ever been told that. It's always nice and comforting to think that police are there. Sure, if it gets bad, we'll go behind their lines.
But still, you stayed.
Yeah. We stayed.
You stayed.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff. It's a terrific book, Shooting the Darkness. And is it available now?
It's available now.
Available now. Crispin, lovely to meet you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much,
Really
Paul.
interesting. Thank you. Now, at 11:15, we're back on the catwalk, as always, with stylist Lorna Duffy, who will have some more looks for the winter season ahead. Back after this.